Okay, so from what I understand, Trump took a meeting and somebody said, it's getting a little obvious that our immigration policy is motivated by racial animus. What we really need to do is lock up a pasty Brit
Right.
on just completely vague premises. So this story is blowing up among our friends on the British Isles right now, but it gives you an idea of the kind of collateral damage that you get from the kind of immigration policies that are kind of mindless, bureaucratic, um, vaguely quasi legal practices, and who can get caught up in it unexpectedly. Because I'm sure they didn't want the press of locking up some British girl backpacking, but that's what happened. So this is a post that was put out by a group in Leeds. This is fascism. This is Becky Burke. She was on a backpacking tour of North America and crashed into Trump's immigration pogroms. Her father writes, our daughter Becky, a 28-year-old British tourist, has been caught up in the recent immigration crackdown in the US. What was meant to be a life changing 4 month backpacking trip across North America has turned into a nightmare. Despite being a tourist with no criminal record, she was handcuffed and taken to a detention facility in Tacoma, Washington. Becky's current conditions are deeply concerning. She is sharing a cell, surviving on a diet of cold rice, potatoes, and beans. She is vegan and has limited access to phone calls. Visitors are restricted to speaking through a glass screen via a telephone. All her possessions have been confiscated, and she feels isolated and desperate to come home. We are doing everything we can. We are in touch with the British consulate in London and San Francisco. An American friend is helping by sending funds to her inmate account so she can buy basic necessities like tea. All right, I'll grant you that's the most British shit ever.
Right.
But progress has that's the necessity. Tea. But progress has been slow, and we urgently need more support. We are asking for your help. Please share Becky's story widely through your networks. We hope to connect with experts, legal professionals, or anyone who can offer advice or assistance. Visa rule warning as tourists detained at U.S. border. Um, a Welsh woman has spoken about being held in horrendous conditions after she was accused of violating her visa and was stopped at the U.S. border. Becky Burke, 28, has spent 11 days in a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Processing Center in Washington State and was also denied entry into Canada over a visa mix up. Speaking to the BBC, Ms. Burke said, they keep saying in all their booklets that this is not a prison. It's hard to distinguish from my conception of a prison. Well, Becky, it's not a prison because they say it's not.
Right.
You've read your Orwell, I'm
Right.
sure. I said all aliens in violation of U.S. immigration law may be subjected to arrest, detention, and if found removable by final order, removal from the United States, regardless of nationality. I said she was being detained at the Northwest ICE Processing Center. Her father, Paul Burke, has urged travelers to be very careful about their visa requirements. U.S. Customs and Border Protection said it could not comment on specific cases for privacy reasons, but added all persons arriving at a port of entry to the United States are subject to inspection. CBP officers treat all travelers with integrity, respect, professionalism, and according to law. In the event a foreign national is found inadmissible to the United States, CBP will provide the foreign national an opportunity to procure travel to his or her own home country. If the foreign national is unable to do so, he or she will be turned over to the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement removal operations for repatriation. The UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office confirmed it was supporting a British national. Ms. Burke, an artist from Portskewett, Monmouthshire, began backpacking around the U.S. on 7th January. Picked a hell of a time of year to do it.
Okay.
She had flown from New York to Portland, Oregon, where she spent time with a host family, helping with household chores in return for accommodation. At the end of February, she traveled to Seattle with plans to travel to Vancouver in Canada to stay with another family. However, when she reached the border, Mr. Burke said the Canadian authorities denied her entry as they were concerned she may try to work illegally. Now, from my understanding, if you're from England, you can work there anyway for a couple of years. You're able to go to any Commonwealth country and live and work there. I believe it's for 2 years.
Ah,
So
interesting. Yeah, I
so
didn't
why
think about
would
that.
why would she need to work illegally there? So this is stupid on the Canadian side as well. Um, she described how she spent 6 hours at the border waiting while officials were, quote, trying to determine if what I had been doing in America counted as work. She said she was interrogated, and despite explaining she was not paid at all, it was decided she had violated her visa. Ms. Burke said she was being held in a dormitory of 110 people in a maxed out immigration detention center in Tacoma, Washington. Quote, they wake us up at 6:30 a.m. There is never enough time to sleep. It's so cold, she said. I wear the same jumper for a week. They're short or out of stuff like blankets and extra clothes. I have one towel. She added many of the people she had met were stuck at the center, separated from their families, in some cases for years. Everyone is actually really shocked when I explain my situation, she added. Hang on, you are not the brown. You are not the
Yeah.
brown. I came to the US for the first time 2 years ago. I had a great time. That's why I wanted to come back again. I love nature and hiking. Now I see no nature in here at all. Immigration experts tell the BBC that once Ms. Burke informed Canadian officials of her plans and they denied her entry, a suspension of her visa waiver and detention on the US side was probably unavoidable. Many countries strictly interpret what constitutes compensated work, even if no money changes hands. And under the best of circumstances, processing within the US immigration system can move slowly.
Can't you just
It's
say,
an
all right, fine, I won't wash the dishes. I won't do anything. I'll just stay here for free. I'll just be a freeloader.
well, this gets into that.
Yeah.
Like she's willing to leave, but they're so backed up that it's unclear when
Right.
the bureaucracy will release her. It's an unusual circumstance. She says she is unlike most of the more than 100 detainees in her building in Tacoma, many of whom have been held for months or even years. She wants to travel back to her home in the UK as soon as possible, while others she speaks to, from places like Mexico, Brazil, and Russia, have family in the US and are unwilling or unable to return to their home nations. According to the experts, we probably won't have any advance notice of when she is allowed to get on a plane and leave. It could happen, and her family find out about it after the fact. Ms. Burke's dad described the situation as a misunderstanding of her accommodation arrangements, which were just like a cultural exchange. He said Ms. Burke got free accommodation for helping host families around the house, which he believes authorities may have suspected broke the terms of her tourist visa. Mr. Burke told BBC Radio Wales Breakfast he could not understand why his daughter was locked up and she's in an orange prison jumpsuit whilst the paperwork gets sorted out. He said what was meant to be a life changing backpacking trip has turned into a nightmare. He added, at first, she was just distraught. She was inconsolable. She is allowed to ring out using a shared iPad, but we can't call her. The dad said, as their family is not American, they cannot add money to Ms. Burke's inmate account for her to buy essentials, so they've reached out to some American friends to help. Mr. Burke said his daughter just wants to come home and has asked for voluntary departure, but it has been radio silence. The family have been told voluntary departure has to be approved by a judge, but added that they do not know how to make that happen. Melissa Shavin, a U.S. immigration lawyer based in London, said Ms. Burke could be released either through voluntary departure or expedited removal, but the process of appearing in front of a judge as part of voluntary departure could be delayed because several dozen of the approximately 700 immigration judges had resigned or been fired by the Trump administration. Ms. Burke said she planned the trip before Trump's presidency, but was cautious and aware she would need to prove that she did not intend to stay in the country. She added she was lucky compared to some people who were fighting to remain in the country and were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Everyone's story is really sad. No one deserves to be in here. Everyone detained here is so nice, she said. Um, so here, that this is what they call the law of unintended consequences. Does the Trump administration really want the press of locking up some pasty British girl who
A
didn't do
couch surfer,
anything?
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, who didn't do anything other than to try to come here and backpack? No, but hey, man, once you unleash this kind of bureaucracy and this kind of zero tolerance, and it's up to the chuds at the immigration service to decide what that means, well, things like this are going to happen. And now, because the bureaucracy is so broken and underfunded, they don't have an obvious legal way to get her out more quickly, right? She's caught up in this bureaucratic process. They don't have enough judges. How long is this girl going to be in there? Weeks, months? And listen to these conditions that they don't have any option other than to give her the same meal of rice, potatoes, and beans every day. How long are they going to do that? A month, 2 months? I mean, this it's almost like a Twilight Zone episode. This is like a favorite device of the Twilight Zone to have somebody who would never experience these kinds of conditions experience what this is like, what actually happens to people who you would never talk to, you would never encounter under normal circumstances. I mean, look at what she says. Everybody in there is so nice. Nobody in here really deserves this. Um, and for other countries, this isn't getting any press in the United States. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. But as somebody who used to work in the tourism industry, what do you think this is going to do for tourism? Because in
Right.
England, this story is blowing up big time and across the continent. And this is happening at a time when people are taking it upon themselves to boycott the United States in retaliation for the tariffs. It's not just counter tariffs. You're having people around the world who are being hit with these tariffs deciding to boycott American goods, particularly in Canada. They have a whole campaign going to buy the Canadian version of goods that people are buying American. So you have this administration is kind of stomping around like the 400-pound gorilla with the assumption there's nothing others can do to retaliate. You're just going to have to take it. And there are ways people can retaliate. Elon's not going to suffer for it. He has more money than you could spend in 100 lifetimes. The average American is going to suffer for it when people don't want to come to America anymore because they're afraid they're going to wind up in an ICE facility on a paperwork mishap.
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, I think the question that people are going to start considering is, do they really want to live in a place like this? Like, is this
Right.
like, do people want to live in this environment? Like, if you are, really dug in and engaging online, 24/7, the way a lot of high profile MAGA accounts are, okay, this is fun to you because
Right.
this is what you
Yeah.
do, right?
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
just brawl all day with people, and the more hostile the circumstances, the more grist for the mill, right? It kind of feeds what you do. Does the average person want this? Is
Right.
the average person gonna want to live in a place like this? This sounds like a nice
Or
place to live, or to visit, or to
or
travel to.
visit.
Right? Exactly.
Like, why would you,
Yeah.
with all this chaos going on,
Right.
why would you want to come here?
Why? Yeah.
Delta just took a huge hit because they reported a drop in demand for air travel. Now it's partly the economy, people not being able to afford it, but I think you're going to see a huge hit to American tourism, both just because people don't like Donald Trump, that they're not going to want to come to America. But I think also with the tariffs, people are going to want to retaliate against America by not putting money into the American economy with their tourist dollars. And then you get stories like this. I mean, that's terrifying. That's terrifying. Hey, this country is so crazy that I could just wind up getting caught up in some kind of ICE deportation scheme.
Exactly.
What am I going to go there for? I hear the
Exactly.
Seychelles are lovely this time of year.
Yeah, the Seychelles.
The
Yes,
Seychelles, our favorite place on this show.
that's right.
Please clap.